Meditation is one of the best ways to improve almost every area of your life. Whether you're listening to a guided, whether you prefer to just sit calmly and relax and reflect with your eyes closed, whether you're doing subliminals or hypnosis, they're all techniques that affect the brain in different ways. And that's where the results come from. That's how you're retraining. That's how you're letting go. That's how you're not taking things so seriously. You're telling your brain not to react like that, not to get angry. You're telling your brain to control your emotions. You're telling your brain to control your heart. So when you're in a meditative state and you're focusing on good, you're visualizing, picturing the way that you want your life to be. You're being happy. You're at the weight you want to be. You're with the partner. You're doing whatever you love to do most. And you're free and relaxed. The brain tells the body to behave like that. The brain tells the body to react like that. That is one of the best ways to learn to not take life so seriously. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Menopause Mindshift Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Lisa R. Triggs. Today, I want to talk about taking life too seriously. I'm totally guilty of it, especially in the past. I would take everything so seriously. I was always so stressed up. I was wound up tight. I was tense and it wasn't good. And that I discovered was one of the things that actually made my symptoms worse because I was taking everything so seriously. Everything at one time became a big deal. And that's just part of the symptoms, actually, some of the symptoms I had, because everything was a big deal, right? I had such a sense of overwhelm at certain points, that everything was a big deal. So I was taking everything too seriously. And part of it, I believe, was because that's the way I was raised, right? These are behaviors that are most likely learned. If you grow up in a household where your parents are more relaxed, very patient, you might not be as wound up and tight and anxious and even angry for that matter as someone was raised in a household where there was fighting, anger, drama, things like that. So I'm the youngest of 7 children. So over the years, since I'm the youngest, I probably didn't experience as much drama, so to speak, as my older siblings or with my parents. By the time I came along, my parents were a little bit more lackadaisical. I got to stay out all night, my prom night, my siblings didn't, and stuff like that. And I was involved with music and different things. So they actually came out to skating things. I did that for a while. And, the music, different things with the band. And they were involved a little bit more in my life than they were my older siblings. But I still had somewhat of a tense, stressful upbringing. And by that, I was brought up and raised at a time where things were different than we raise our children nowadays. Nowadays, we time out. And we, count 3 or whatever. There's different techniques and things that are acceptable nowadays from when I grew up. I'm 57. So when I grew up, corporal punishment was still around and used. And it was used on me. But that's the way it was. I don't hate my parents for it or anything like that. That's what was acceptable at that time. That's what was done to them. So that's what was done for me. And especially with 7 children, I'm sure patience did grow thin now and again. But the downside to that, I do believe that affected my self-esteem, the corporal punishment, right? That it was the fear of my dad saying, don't make me get up, and things, my mother saying, wait till your father gets home, that kind of thing. And just so you know, my father, who was another one of my parents, were awful tyrants. My father was actually the very sweetest, most loving man. But when you're raising children, especially that many children, you have to have a sense of discipline. So there was somewhat of a heavy hand, when we would argue amongst ourselves and things like that. There happened to be 4.5 years between my older brother and I, and the first 6 are no more than 2 years apart. So that left a big gap in the way that I was raised as opposed to my siblings. I believe that they had a tougher time, actually. And of course, the older ones were responsible for helping out with as younger ones when they became 12, 11, things like that. Children then started helping out with their younger siblings at a much younger age, I believe, than they do now. We were left alone even to start babysitting by 11, 12 years old. And when my kids were growing up, I wasn't quite that young when I was raising my children. When they were 11 and 12, I don't believe it was legal yet to let them be alone, let alone watch somebody else. So different time, different upbringing. So I do believe that the tenseness, some of the things that I find make me tense and nervous or anxious, anything like that, are partly because the way I was raised and also with life experience, right? If you have had difficulties, trauma, things like that, that affects your psyche, that affects your whole being. And I know it has affected me. I know it has affected my self-confidence, the way I have viewed myself. That's why it was so important when I went through my transformational journey, when I have gone within myself and doing the work on myself and realizing that the way I felt about myself and the way I do feel about myself affects every other area of my life, including my menopause symptoms. That was a very huge revelation in recognizing how I was raised, how I felt about myself, how I raised my children, how I behaved in my relationships, even work, personal friendships, so forth. Some people thrive on drama. They have to have something going on in their life that's dramatic, either an argument, an event, anything like that, where there's some kind of drama. Sometimes been raised in that kind of atmosphere where some people don't know any different than having constant dramatic events, whether witness their parent abuse, one parent abusing the other, or one parent abusing them, or other siblings, and so forth. So I believe that helps make us up. That makes up who we are. And most of us know that. Most of us have heard all the psychology that there is on that, Dr. Spock and so forth, and all the Dr. Phil even, and all the new people. I'm sure it's going to change again as our children raise their children. I'm sure they'll discover ways that we're doing some things wrong as well. And now there's a better way to do it by the time our kids have kids. So being raised the way I was, that left me to be, and experiences that I've had in my life, I was left with being a very tense person. So when anything stressful happens in my life, I can overreact at times. But when it came to my menopause symptoms, I actually withdrew and I just kind of became quiet. I kind of became complacent because at times I felt it so overwhelming. To tell you the truth, I just didn't want to be bothered. I didn't want to have to take care of anybody else but me. And that was all I could handle at that time. So as I went through this process of learning about myself and going within and using these techniques, these 8 core elements, these manifestation techniques, and processing it, writing things down and burning it or tearing up and getting rid of it, releasing it, is all shedding that away. It's part of the process to release that tension, to lighten the load on my shoulders, to lighten the load in my life, to lighten the load in my relationships, to not take everything so seriously. And I discovered when I did lighten that, when I didn't take things so seriously, life was easier. I think we don't realize that all that drama, all that tenseness, all that stuff that we're holding on to, for what? Do we like it? Do we like living like that? Do you like being angry? I don't. I don't want to have to be angry. I want to have fun. I want to be happy, right? I want to live my life. I want to go boating. I want to travel. I want to do all these things. Who knows how much time we have left on this earth at any given time? You could end up getting a sudden health problem, cancer, or be in an accident, whatever. And when you come to that point, when that happens, what are you going to say about how you lived your life? Are you going to say, I lived my life the best way that I could, and I enjoyed myself, and I loved my family, and I loved my life? Or are you going to say, I have so many regrets. I wish I hadn't done this. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't ended this relationship. I wish I had been more patient. I wish I had been more patient with my children. I wish I had raised them differently. I wish I had done this differently and had done that differently. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person. So that's why I make a choice every single day about how I think and act and speak, right? If I catch myself getting angry, this is the first time I'm using a new webcam that I just bought. So I had to set it all up and figure out how to use it, how to make this work before I came on today. And I was getting frustrated, new technology and so forth. And then I thought to myself, no, stop. There's no need to get frustrated. I can ask my husband for help. I can Google how to fix it. I can look on the camera website. All I had to do was just take a few more minutes. Instead of getting impatient about it and getting upset about it, I took it to calm down, stopped myself for a minute and paused and said, okay, I have the tools available to me to figure this out. I can Google, I can go on the website, I can ask my husband. Sometimes you can just fiddle around in the program and you click a button and boom, stuff works. So that's a small example. And I know it's not as easy as that. There's big life things that happen when we lose people, when we're traumatized, things like that. They really mess with our heads, with our value system, the impression we have on ourselves and others, because how we were raised, I believe, and the life experience that we have also affects how we view others. Make sense? For me, it boiled down to the things that I say quite often now is how I feel about myself, how I'm going to also treat other people in my life and that I meet and that I come across. So if I don't love myself fully, how can I expect to love my partner, my friends, my family, even my children fully? That is really something that I constantly think about because sometimes, yes, it's easier said than done. It takes work, especially when you've been living 50 odd years thinking a certain way. And now I'm retraining my brain to think differently about everything. My husband talks about the one day that I came out of my office here and said, I have been thinking about everything in the wrong way. I have been thinking about everything negatively. I've been thinking about you negatively. I've been thinking about menopause negatively. I have been stuck in a negative circle. I have been stuck in a funnel of negativity and I need to get out of it. That recognition was the first step. That was the first step in healing. That was the first step in recognizing. That was the first step in being aware and being able to change. And it's not an overnight process, is a constant thing, daily. It's a daily choice. I talk about this all the time. We have a choice in life. You always have a choice the minute you wake up in the morning, how you want your day to go. And yes, sometimes external forces can affect your mood or your behavior, but that's when you have to kind of do a self-check and say, why am I letting this get to me? What's really going on here? How am I feeling about myself, or what's going on inside of me would make me wake up in a bad mood or anything like that. Sometimes it could be as simple as, am I hungry? Do I need to feed myself? But the point is always that choice. So let's go back around for a second. By choosing to be happy and choosing to speak in a certain way, choosing to speak good, writing things down that I want to happen, being grateful for the things that have happened, and getting rid of tearing up or whatever, the things that I need to let go helps me loosen up, relax, and not take things so seriously, not take life so seriously. So where do we go from here? Where do you go from the point that now we've recognized that? Now we're in recognition. I've acknowledged that I was too tense. And even now, if it happens again, I'm like, hey, let's get back into love. Why are you not loving yourself completely right now? Why are you not loving hubby right now? Why are the kids getting on my nerves? So what is it about what's going on externally, what's going on with them in the relationship or what have you, that is, I'm going to say triggering or affecting? What is it about that is affecting me in this way to make me go back to taking things so seriously, to stressing about it? It's not worth me losing sleep over or constantly focusing on being obsessed with, because there's nothing I can do about what's happened in the past. But it's that whole recognition. Easier said than done, so to speak. But recognition is the first step of healing. Okay, I know I can't do anything about that anymore. It's gone. And I went through this. I carried guilt around with me for 20 years or something that happened with my daughter. I carried that guilt for 20 years and I had resided to, it's just something I have to live with. I've learned to live with it. But in the last few years, in working on myself and recognizing it, the thought of what had happened and how I blamed myself, the guilt that I had over not being a good parent, a mom. Part of the process of letting that go was apologizing to my daughter and saying, which I did a few years ago, I said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this happened. I didn't protect you. I wasn't there in the right way and all those types of things. So acknowledgement of what had happened, apologizing to my daughter helped set me free. And hearing her say, I don't blame you, Mom. I know there's nothing you guys could have done. It's okay. You have done the best you could. And I love you. And I know you were there for me later, right? Because after what she went through, of course, then the way we parented, the way I parented changed to make sure that she was safe, that our family was safe. So that actually made us great parents. If the kids wanted to have a party or you want to go to the movies? We'll drive, all that kind of stuff. Sleepovers? Yep. Have kids sleep over here, So we always had kids coming and going and play dates and teenage years, parties and sleepovers at our house. And that was on purpose because we knew where our kids were and that our kids were safe. And then so were the other kids as well. So it's a process of peeling away at yourself and digging deep, letting these emotions out, feeling them, recognizing them, and then putting them where they need to be. I'm not saying bottle it down. No, I'm saying to release it out of your mind, your heart, your body. And it can be done. You can train your brain and your body to relax and let it go. And I'm going to say one of the biggest ways that I did it, because you're probably wondering, okay, you're saying this, you're saying to let it go and all, but how? How do we take things less seriously? Here's how I did it. Writing it down, letting it go. I listened to frequencies. So visual frequencies that specifically help heal my body. It all affects the brain. And the brain tells this what to do. I had a doctor tell us not too long ago that if you were experiencing a heartache, upset in your heart, that you could take a Tylenol and you will feel better because the brain doesn't know the difference. So that just goes to show you how the control center in the brain can work. It's all scientific, but yet the scientific goes with manifestation. I'm not going to say woo-woo because let's be frank, everybody. Let's get it out there. Gone are the days where manifestation is a taboo word. Everybody is manifesting nowadays. And let me tell you right now, you are manifesting good, bad, or ugly, whether you realize it or not. So you can say, oh, yeah, but you may not recognize it. But those of us who know, we see it in you. We see it in other people. The saying, when you know, you know. So those of us in the know can tell when we see people not living their true selves, not loving themselves completely, not enjoying their life as much, that they are still holding on to things and they haven't learned how to release it. Meditation is one of the best ways to improve almost every area of your life. Whether you're listening to a guided, whether you prefer to just sit calmly and relax and reflect with your eyes closed, whether you're doing subliminals or hypnosis. They're all techniques that affect the brain in different ways. And that's where the results come from. That's how you're retraining. That's how you're letting go. That's how you're not taking things so seriously. You're telling your brain not to react like that, not to get angry. You're telling your brain to control your emotions. You're telling your brain to control your heart. So that's what happens when you take the Tylenol. Your brain is telling your heart, it's okay. You're better now. So you will physically feel better. So when you're in a meditative state and you're focusing on good, you're visualizing, picturing the way that you want your life to be. You're being happy. You're at the weight you want to be. You're with the partner. You're doing whatever you love to do most. And you're free and relaxed. The brain tells the body to behave like that. The brain tells the body to react like that. That is one of the best ways to learn to not take life so seriously, not take your menopause symptoms so seriously. So what? I'm in menopause. So what? I had a hot flash. Here's the thing. If we actually didn't obsess over it so much, it probably wouldn't happen so much. But if you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh my God, I had the most intense hot flash last night. Guess what's going to happen? Oh my God, I kept waking up last night. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't this, I couldn't that. Guess what's going to happen? But instead, if you said, oh my gosh, I just had the best sleep. I just love my body right now. I just love the stage of life that I'm in right now. I think we can all agree that one of the best things about menopause, or the best thing about menopause, is not having monthly cycles. Can we all agree on that? Not having monthly cycles to deal with any cramps, all that kind of stuff, is the best thing about menopause. So focus on that and start there. Then what else can you find out that's good about it, right? I mean, technically, even I went through a period when I was in perimenopause for almost 10 years. So nearing the end of that 10 years, just before I started full menopause. So in other words, when I stopped having cycles altogether, I went through the period where my libido actually increased a little bit. I had a surge, which often happens, right? We go through a period where things are surging. When things are surging, that's great. So the libido went up. Then I'm having, my hubby didn't mind that, of course. He's like, wow. But when that happened, that's me being free. That's me letting up. That's me being relaxed. So that was something that was good that happened during menopause. Let's talk about sex for a second, because having an orgasm, ladies, having an orgasm is actually one of the best ways to relieve stress and reduce stress, and even manifest. So why aren't we having them regularly? So many of us are saying, I have no interest, right? Because when our estrogen drops and the progesterone drops and the testosterone drops, I have low libido, I have no libido, I'm not interested, that kind of thing. And we all know that there are natural ways to help increase all of those hormones by using foods, exercise, and if you want to go on bioidenticals or hormone replacement therapy, of course, that helps bring it up. But if you don't want to engage with your partner, spouse, whoever, at least do it yourself. Make sure that you are taking care of you even in that way, because it's a big stress reducer, and you will be reducing that stress will help you be happier, be more focused, live a better life, and be less stressed. So that's one of the ways to reduce stress, and reducing stress helps you more relaxed and lets you stop and think about it, to not take life and things so seriously. So I am guilty as charged of being intense, of taking everything seriously, especially my menopause and my menopause symptoms. And I believe in my body and what I have learned in the last couple of years about my body and about the way the brain functions and the way the hormones function, and the fact that the brain can actually control the body. You can tell your body how to behave. It takes practice and belief in yourself and trust in yourself. But you can tell your body to be a wellness machine. Absolutely. And believe it. So the point of all this is that I have been there. I have been a super serious person. I have gotten too many gray hairs now and taken life too seriously. Let things upset me and bother me, or even obsess over things that were little. I've had to learn to let go of things that I carried around for, like I said, 20 years. But what good is it serving me? What good is it serving my family? That's not the life I want to live. That's not the person I want to be. The person I want to be is this person, is the queen who knows that menopause doesn't have to be so serious. We don't have to be freaking out. And I know I did. I was. I say it, and I will continue to say it, that everything that I talk about, I have lived, had, researched, and done. So I have been that intense person, that stressed person, that person that was just holding on to everything. And for what? To make my body ill? To make my menopause symptoms worse because I was carrying all that around with me? It is such a sense of freedom to let that go. It really is. It's such a sense of freedom to love yourself, to love those around you, to love menopause, to love not having to worry about monthly things or cramps and all that kind of stuff, to be able to be intimate whenever we want. And now I know that's the point I was trying to make before about talking about my increased libido, was that being in menopause, you can do it whenever you want. So there are a lot of pluses to being in menopause. So I beg of you, I implore you, don't take it so seriously. Enjoy this time. Write your own menopause story. Define your own menopause journey. Shift the way you think about menopause. But most of all, start every day with self-love. I'm going to end it there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this all made sense. I hope that you got something from it, or at least one thing from it, because when we lighten up, there is a whole new world up there. That's fun. That's worth living life for. So go out and get it. Go out and live it. Go out and be it. Thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you again next time. Until then, remember, everything is love. Start every day with self-love, and the world is yours. Bye for now.